We are back with more Big Bang Theory, and today I'm going to be reviewing Season 2, Episode 14, The Financial Permeability. The episode gets this title because in this episode, Sheldon lends Penny some money to help her out, and it causes her a great deal of stress while she's trying to work on paying him back. This episode starts off with a pretty interesting scene where the group, Leonard, Sheldon, Raj, and Howard, are in the apartment trying to figure out a way to go to a movie and a restaurant, but they have a detailed map explaining their problem as they are trying to find both a Sheldon-approved movie theater and a Sheldon-approved restaurant that are in the same proximity so that they can do both. The problem is that Sheldon has a lot of specific concerns. He doesn't want to go to some theaters because they don't have icy machines and he refuses to substitute Slurpees. He doesn't want to go to one theater because they have Twizzlers instead of Red Vines and he can't substitute those either. And he's unwilling to wait for dinner till after the movie because that would result in him having to make his morning bowel movement at work instead of his apartment. This is a prime example of just how rigid and unflexible Sheldon is, and I love this scene. Especially with the result, and that's that they decide that they have to go to the movie without Sheldon, so Leonard, Raj, and Howard all leave, and even Sheldon looks back at the map and realizes there was no other choice.
They're right, it was the only option.
We next see Sheldon returning with a box of Red Vines, so at least he was able to satisfy that desire. Penny comes running up the stairs and runs into Sheldon's apartment and tells him to close the door, and she says that the building manager was showing an apartment and she's behind on her rent. She then says she's behind on a lot of her bills because the restaurant she works at, the Cheesecake Factory, cut back her hours. And her car broke down, which she needed to pay to fix. Sheldon points out that her problems would all be solved if she had more money. And so he opens up a can of peanut brittle, guarded by fake snakes, and pulls out a wad of cash and basically tells Penny she can take what she needs.
Take some.
Don't be silly.
I'm never silly.
Penny is reluctant, but Sheldon assures her that this is money he doesn't need right now and she can pay him back when she is able. Sheldon goes into an interesting point here. He says that 46.9% of his after-tax incomes cover his living expenses, and all the rest of his money is divided up between the small savings account, this peanut butter can, and a hollowed-out action figure. And he tells her if she doesn't take the money, it'll be more awkward for him to pass her living in a cardboard box outside. So Penny does take the money and says she'll pay him back as soon as you can, and again, Sheldon notes, of course you will, because it would be impossible to pay him back sooner than you can. It's interesting to note here that Sheldon does not seem bothered at all by whatever amount of money Penny needs to borrow. However, in the next scene, it's apparently obvious that this is immediately causing Penny to be quite stressed about paying Sheldon back, as when Leonard and Sheldon are getting their mail, Penny comes in and gets hers, and Sheldon notes that there's a package for Penny, and she says it's a beret, and she tells him right away that this is something she ordered months ago and it was on back order. Now, Sheldon is just being Sheldon, and he gives her some fun facts about a beret, but Penny is a little off and seems stressed and says that she doesn't want to be accused of shopping all the time. So it's very clear that Penny is worried that Sheldon is going to think that she's off spending the money he lent her on frivolous purchases. But what she doesn't realize at this moment is that Sheldon is just acting normal being Sheldon, and it's all in Penny's head. This continues into the next scene, is when they're having takeout. Leonard is giving out the food, and he tells Howard he owes him $2 more. He gives Penny hers, and she asks what she owes, and he says it's on her, but she says she wants to pay, so he says it's $14.50. Raj makes a joke that if he wore tight clothes, he'd get free Chinese food too. And Penny gets mad and yells at Raj saying she pays her own way in this world, causing him to nervously run out of the room to go to the bathroom. When Sheldon enters the room to get his food, Penny continues to act odd around him, saying that she's having takeout food for the first time, and then says that she'll pay him back as soon as she can. Sheldon just says if she's under pressure, he could always lend her more money if she needs it, and she gets mad about this again and takes her food and leaves. Again, it's very clear that Penny is very stressed about the money. She wants to pay Sheldon back, and she's nervous about it. She thinks he's going to be upset about it. She doesn't realize that Sheldon doesn't seem to care, and he just wants to help her out. Leonard goes over to check on Penny and reassures her that Sheldon really doesn't care when she pays him back. It's one of his few good qualities. Penny says it's more than that. After the money she borrowed from Sheldon, she only had $14 left, which is what she gave him for the Chinese food. Leonard helps her look through her bills to try to find where the problem is, and he finds that she had paid $1,800 to the Los Angeles Superior Court to pay court fines for her ex-boyfriend Kurt, causing more trouble for her again. Penny notes she might have to find somewhere cheaper to live if she can't come up with more money, and so Leonard decides to spring into action, because he can't risk Penny moving away. He goes back across the hall where Sheldon, Raj, and Howard have begun a game of Talisman, which, by the way, if you've never played, is a very fun game, but it takes a long time, and it has a lot of rules. Leonard begins asking them for help to try to go get the money from Kurt, which they declined. None of them want to do it. My favorite part in this scene is where Leonard makes a Lord of the Rings reference. He references the fact that when Frodo left the Shire, Merry, Pippin, and Sam all came with him, to which Sheldon's perfect reply is, yes, they did, and they had a terrible time of it. Leonard does somehow reluctantly get the group to come along, and when they get there, he asks if everybody's ready for the plan, and Howard gives an interesting note.
If Polly's going to wet himself, I'm going to throw up, Sheldon's going to run away, and you're going to die.
About how it's going to be a miserable time for all of them. Leonard knocks on the door and asks Kurt for Penny's money, and Kurt basically says Penny will get the money when she gets it and closes the door in his face. Everybody else wants to give up and leave, but Sheldon says they need to stay, but the others can leave if they want to, so they all do, leaving Leonard by himself. He knocks on the door and gets Kurt to come again, and he says he's not leaving without Penny's money. Well, he does eventually have to leave without Penny's money, but he does get a formal acknowledgement of the debt, as Sheldon notes, in which is in the form of a note written by Kurt on Leonard's head saying that he owes Penny $1,800, to which Howard notes that maybe they should get his head notarized. The plan, however, in the long run does seem to have worked, at least to one degree, as in the final scene we see Penny coming over to pay Sheldon back the money she had borrowed. She notes that she picked up some more hours, cut back her bills, and that Kurt did come and pay her the money that he owed her finally. Now, that's where the plan did work. Where it seemed to backfire is that Kurt did not mention the fact that Leonard came over to see him and just used this as an opportunity to rekindle his relationship with Penny, and in fact, they are going to be going on a date after this. So Leonard did a very kind, nice thing, but it kind of blew up in his face for his attempts with Penny. But Sheldon notes that Leonard is the true hero of this story, and that true heroes do it for the right reasons, not for adulation. And he says that minstrels will be singing songs about Leonard and leaves the room singing an example of this, which is pretty funny. This is all in all a very solid episode of The Big Bang Theory. I think this episode's very funny and has a lot of great moments. Poor Leonard. He is trying still to get together with Penny, trying to help her. And in this episode, he seems to help her, and he has good intentions in his heart. He does think that it's going to help him in the long run, probably, to maybe get a little bit closer to Penny, and all that part does blow up in his face, as we just noted. He does do a good thing, and this probably does help their relationship in the long run. Leonard won't see those benefits till a little bit further down the line. The other key thing I like about this episode is that we do get a new trait to Sheldon. While Sheldon is very immovable, as we see in the beginning with the movie theater problem, Sheldon does things his way, but one thing we learn about Sheldon in this episode is he doesn't really care about money. He sees money as a tool to meet his needs and pay for his living expenses and his habits, but after that, he's not too concerned with the rest of his money. He's saving it for something useful far down the line. So when he has to loan his friends some money, it doesn't bother him at all. That's a nice trait. All in all, I would give this episode a solid 8 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments section, and please be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out for the next video coming soon.